The Auburn Tigers face a must-win game as the Missouri Tigers come into town. Here's what they need to do to pull out the win.
Well, Zach, I actually just finished crushing some chicken parm, and I am freaking ready to rock and roll.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. And happy Ferg Friday to all of you who celebrated, as we are joined by Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer. Ferg, it's been so interesting this week because this is a must-win game for the Auburn Tigers. I think everybody would agree with that, even though it's Missouri and it seems like it should be a team that you certainly should beat. But the storylines and the conversation this week, it hasn't been about this upcoming game, even though it is extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, when you have your worst loss in like a decade at home, this will really do it for you. Yeah, no, this is a lot turned this past weekend. I feel like the tone and the tenor around Auburn football, there's an opportunity. We talked about it last week. There's an opportunity to kind of hit a reset button if you win. But then when you lose and you lose the way you did, it's only gotten worse. You know, this has been a program that's been mired in negativity really since the 5-game losing streak last season. And it hasn't gotten any better. And, it's definitely gotten worse this past week. But if there's a team in the SEC that you could play right now at home, if you're Auburn, to try to, as Bryan Harsin says, take it one game at a time, hold on to the rope, so to speak. It is Missouri. It would be Missouri. I would say Missouri even over Vanderbilt right now because it looks like Vanderbilt's playing a little bit better football at the moment. But yeah, this is a matchup you absolutely have to take advantage of, and it'll say a lot about how the rest of the season ends up going. I mean, this Saturday is going to tell a lot about what kind of tone we talk about in the rest of this season.
Yeah, and I think there's several reasons why this game is a must-win for Auburn. I mean, off the field stuff, but I'm just talking about on the field stuff. I mean, this team, I think, needs a little bit of confidence right now.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, the way the second half went against Penn State. You start 1-0 in the SEC, and all of a sudden you can kind of look up at the standings and say, like, okay, in the conference, we've done everything we needed to possibly do so far. LSU's coming into town the following week, and obviously if you beat LSU, it doesn't matter what that looks like. If you beat LSU, that's going to be a big thing. You're shaking your head no. What does that mean?
No, about Georgia. The following week.
Let's all go past that.
Yeah, one game at a time. Bryan Harsin keeps saying 1-0. I think that focus is going to have to be necessary these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, if you start 2-0 and nobody's expecting you to go to Athens and win, and so you're playing with house money there. But then after that, I mean, outside of Georgia, every team in the SEC has shown moments of maybe not being as good as they were a year ago. And so all of a sudden, you got a chance to potentially make some stuff happen moving forward. But like you said, 1-0 mentality. It all starts with what the Tigers need to do tomorrow on Saturday against the Missouri Tigers. What are you expecting to see from the quarterback position, right? I mean, reports came out, TJ Finley will not be available tomorrow. Right. And so it certainly appears that it'll be Robby Ashford. There have been rumors or reports and speculation of maybe some other guys, but I'm in the Robby Ashford camp right now. I'd be surprised if it wasn't him as a starter. Where are you on this?
I think based on what we've seen the first few weeks, it's probably going to be Robby Ashford.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. Yeah,
you would have to think so. But I think a lot could be determined on like where this staff sees Zach Calzada and his health. I think a lot of that you'll learn a lot about that this Saturday, whether you see him or not. And then also Holden Garner, like, are you ready to pull the trigger on him? Because the situation here at quarterback is this: for the first 3 games of the season, you have had TJ Finley basically running your offense, and then you would have Robby Ashford come in certain spots, in certain situations, running certain plays, with the exception, of course, of the second half against Penn State, when he basically ran the offense and he came in for Finley. And I guess he did that against Mercer too. But Auburn's got to determine this week if they think Robby Ashford's ready to run this full offense and he's ready to be QB1 with Finley out, Or is Ashford still going to be the change of pace? You don't run the full offense guy. And does that mean you have to pull in a guy like a Zach Calzada or a Holden Garner to be the more like, all right, the more traditional, straightforward pocket passing type of quarterback? So whichever direction Auburn goes in there, I think is going to say a lot about where they view this offense right now and what they think is going to happen moving forward. Personally, if I had to give my opinion on it, I think the way Auburn's offensive line struggled mightily against Penn State, having a guy like Ashford to be able to manage that now Finley did a good job of it, just creating stuff out of nothing.
Good for him.
And obviously Robby Ashford's got the speed to be able to do that. The other thing to keep in mind is that you've got to run the ball. You abandoned it in this last game. You got to run the ball. And statistically, when Robby Ashford's on the field, Auburn's running backs have been more successful. It just naturally opens things up. Now, they're not like running 8 or 9 yards of carry with him on the field compared to not. But even against Penn State, the little Auburn ran the ball.
Yeah.
Tank Bigsby, Jarquez Hunter were more successful on average when Ashford was in the game because it just naturally opens some things up. So that's where I think if you're ready and you're confident enough to give it to TJ Finley, let him ride. Robby Ashford and let him ride. Yeah. This is the opportunity to do it. This is the situation to do it. Now, if he struggles, or if this week you feel like Calzada or Garner are ready, you might still see some of the two quarterback stuff. We'll see. It's just going to be a matter of how much they trust Robby Ashford to play in this offense and run the full scope of it.
Yeah.
Then again, the two guys you're talking about who could come in are just as inexperienced in this offense as Robby Ashford is as well. So, the one thing about Finley is that he knew the playbook and he knew the system. He had that stuff. You don't have that anymore. So, however, whatever solution, whatever mix of variables you have to come out with this, I think is going to say a lot about where you feel about this offense and this quarterback situation right now.
And you got to think whatever the coaches decide to go with, or whoever the coaches decide to go with, they have to believe from the bottom of their heart that it's the best thing for Auburn. I mean, it's too important of a situation, a must-win game for them to say otherwise. I mean, all these fans out there that are saying, so-and-so is the best, I can't believe they're not playing them. And it's like, well, if the folks that watch them every day, they need this one, they need this one really bad. So they clearly believe that whoever they trot out there the most on Saturday is the best option for them to win. So I think that note is important to put out there.
Yeah, my thing has always been about coaches is like, coaches make wrong decisions all the time. I mean, they're not infallible by any means. In matters of personnel, though, I usually lean more towards like, they probably know what's going on because they're the ones watching the practices and building the game plans. So there's people who want to see Zach Calzada, and there are people who want to see Holden Garner. But to this point, Auburn has not felt confident enough to use either of those guys. And they would know more about what they're trying to do than everything else. So Saturday is going to answer a lot of questions about a lot of things involving Auburn football. I think quarterback, obviously with it being the most important position on the field, takes center stage there.
Yeah. All right. You had a newsletter about the frequency in which Auburn threw the football that I thought was interesting. I want to get you to kind of open that up a little bit more in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is sponsored by our friend at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy, it's so easy to get started and to get playing daily fantasy sports, whether it's college, whether it's NFL, the NBA once it starts back, MLB every single night, the esports if you're into that, soccer, ton of different things. Actually, golf is really fun to play on here as well. They've got a bunch of different ways to play it. I usually do a lot of the drafts. You're able to kind of get an instant draft going and compete with different folks. That's been what I've done the most of. But there's also, you can do higher or lowers and create a slip, a pick'em slip. It's kind of like a parlay. It's a little different, but it's similar. And so I'm just looking at some of the props that are already up, like Utah at ASU. Cam Rising, 242.5 passing yards. You could take the higher or lower for that. Emory Jones, they've got his rushing, 19.5 rushing yards, and his passing, 191 passing yards. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. And as you stack and add more features, I mean, you can get like 20 times your payout. So there's a lot of fun things to do with all of that. It's like I said, it's the easiest place to win money while playing and watching college football. It's legitimate. I have done it over the past few weekends. It's a ton of fun. You can get started today. Just head to underdogfantasy.com or download the app. Their app is exceptional. Very, very good. Sign up with promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Deposit $100, get $100 free. That is Underdog Fantasy, promo code LOCKEDON. Also, today's show brought to you by our friends at Frisky Whiskey. It is the place to buy all of your favorite beer, wine, whiskey, vodka, any type of liquor or spirit that you are interested in. Frisky Whiskey has it for a very, very reasonable price. Their relationship with distributors, as well as what state they are in, it is significantly cheaper to buy there than anywhere else in the area. If you're in the Auburn, Opelika County area, make that quick 15 to 20 minute drive over. It'll well pay off. Be sure to check it out. It's the only place that I buy any of my alcohol moving forward. Hey, and a lot of you listening outside the Atlanta area, if you're driving in to the game for a tailgate this weekend, be sure to check out their prices on the way in. Frisky Whiskey. Go check them out. Justin Ferguson, our guest with the Auburn Observer, auburnobserver.com. You kind of touched on the fact that Auburn threw it, was it 70% of the time what they called passes against Penn State?
72.97%.
Yep. Not that we're being specific here, but I think you nailed it there. So that surprised me based on how you wrote about it. It surprised you as well. How much of that do you think is the game just not developing the way they thought? And how much of that is out of necessity?
Second half, definitely the way the game developed. But in the first half, Tank Bigsby did not get a carry in the second quarter. You also threw the ball, or at least called passing plays, almost twice as much as you called running plays in the first half. So, yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. I get it from the extent of if your offensive line's not pass protecting or run blocking well at all, yeah, maybe you throw the ball because you can get more chunks that way, right? And if you run and it's unsuccessful, you're behind the chains. Like, I get that. I understand that aspect of it. But sure, I do think the thing we have to go back to is the fact that Tank Bigsby is your most talented offensive player. I would say Jarquez Hunter is one of your top 3, 4, 5, depending on where you feel on the team. Sure. On the offensive side. So, like, stick with it. You know, it's better off because at this point in time, Auburn is not built to throw the football. The roster is not built to win by throwing the football that many times, and you're not as successful throwing the football. You know, there was Bill Connolly at ESPN pointed out. I think it was there was a stat that was like Auburn's in like the hundreds in like a lot of like a pass efficiency and success rate categories in FBS this year. And they've only played one team that's a high quality opponent. Like, you're not built to do this.
Yeah. And
I know running into the wall over and over again can be frustrating, but Tank Bigsby's really good at breaking tackles. Jarquez Hunter's good at breaking tackles too. Damari Alston's shown an ability to like pop with some runs. Even if it's not working, I think there's got to be some stick-to-itiveness to it. Nice. If you're Auburn, because this is how you built your team. This is how you built your offense and your roster. So, like, things get out of hand. Things go a little get out of your control against Penn State for the most part. Like, okay, I get it. I understand some of that. But this week, especially if TJ Finley's not your starting quarterback right now, run the ball. You got to run the ball. You got to find a way to get it going. And even if it isn't successful early, just hammer away at it. I think you don't want to be predictable, but Auburn's just not built right now to be a team that's going to win by throwing the ball that many times. And on top of that, Missouri's run defense is not very good, and they have not been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's good. That definitely helps Auburn out for sure going into Saturday's game. Do you think they will do things differently from a personnel/formation standpoint? I mean, it seems like they do more creative stuff when Robby's in there. We saw a formation with Tank and Jarquez both in the backfield, which I think makes you do things differently as a defense. Do you think that'll change things up and you'll see more of that against Missouri?
I think if Robby's your guy and he's the main guy on Saturday, you'll see some more split back stuff. You'll see some 5 wide stuff. You'll see a lot more shotgun than under center. I think you're going to want to like give the man some space to create, whether it's scrambling or on design runs. Now, he was not effective with his design runs against Penn State, but like I said earlier, Auburn was a little more effective running the ball when he was in the game. And a lot of that comes from your shotgun sets a little bit more spread out, play a little bit more to his style of game. Finley fits kind of more of that pro style set, those sets and those personnel packages. Ashford, I think, can do some of that, but I do see him being more of a guy that you want to operate in the gun, operate with a little bit more, lighter personnels just to manipulate space.
Right. Yeah, that to me, I think is going to be the biggest thing, just because this offense seems pretty basic. It doesn't seem too complex so far. And I think some of that is implementation and execution. And, that's a word that we hear a ton of at a Bryan Harsin press conference. We love the word execution here on the Plains, but I think some of that is true.
Oh, yeah.
But they've got to dress some stuff up a little bit more. And you got to think that starts tomorrow. You got to think.
And you've got to manage the fact that that your offensive line is not winning at the point of attack more often than not. I mean, even against Mercer and San Jose State, they were not dominating the game that you would probably have expected because of the differences in size and all that.
Right.
Look, Auburn's offensive line issues, I mean, I've been writing about it for 3-4 years now. Like, this was a problem that was building up for a while, and it's only getting worse, especially when a guy like Nick Brahms has to retire. And a guy like Tate Johnson coming into his first big game, you could tell in that game if you had to watch the film and say, okay, which one of these guys is brand new to a lot of this? You could identify kind of the spots where now everybody on the offensive line had their bad moments on Saturday, but I think you're seeing some of that is that, the IDing and the communication and some of the internal blocking and all the interior blocking and stuff like that. You're seeing the effect of not having a guy like Nick Brahms, and you're putting a guy in like Tate Johnson. So it's a trial by fire right now. You got to find the best ways to manage around it. You got to find the best ways to scheme around it as much as you can. But, there's also some of it that is at the end of the day, if your offensive line's not winning enough, you're not going to do much on offense. It is the one position group where you have to be on your game every single snap.
So important.
Whether you're running it or passing it. And look, I mean, this isn't a new problem for Auburn, and this isn't something that's taken a lot of us by surprise. Now, I think some of us in the offseason were like, well, maybe they can show some improvement, but it's regression right now, and you got to find a way to do it because by week 4, you kind of are who you are at this point.
Yeah, right. And I want to be clear, and I don't want to speak on behalf of you, but I think you'll agree. Like Tate Johnson, it's not really Tate Johnson's fault at this point. They thought he had another year, and I think a year from now he's going to weigh more. I think he's going to have more muscle mass, and I think he's going to kind of understand more about the game, which you should, every year that you play. So I know a lot of attention has been put on Tate Johnson, but he was kind of thrown to the fire with the Nick Brahms news. So, and
he wasn't the only offensive lineman who struggled.
Sure.
Yeah, there are guys who are older than him that have more experience that struggled because that's a position group where everything's got to work in concert. And when one guy slips up, it makes everybody else look bad. And there's a lot of it. Like, if you played on the offensive line on Saturday for Auburn, you got a lot of stuff to work on.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right about that. All right, a week ago, we talked about Auburn's pass rush. I want to circle back to that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Want to encourage you to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. It is free. All you have to do is click the link in the episode description or show summary down below or in your favorite podcast app, however you are consuming this content. And also sign up for the Auburn Observer. Justin, what all do they get when they sign up at auburnobserver.com?
Got some basketball this week. I'll give you that. auburnobserver.com, newsletters, podcast, pretty much every day of the week. We did 2 podcasts on Thursday. Myself and Painter talked to Bennett Durando of the Montgomery Advertiser, who is a Missouri alum. And so he had a perspective on Missouri and kind of, it's a really interesting game for Missouri too. This is what makes this game on Saturday fascinating. New friends of the program out with Painter and Pablo and Dave. If you're looking for people to Auburn fans, if you're going through it right now and you want to hear people kind of go through it with you, that's your podcast.
Yeah.
In the newsletters this week, we mentioned there was an offensive line film room, the pass rate one, also basketball. Already getting some hype there on that. Big mailbag out on today, if you're listening to this, and then we'll have coverage all over the throughout the weekend of Auburn, Missouri. Everything moving forward. $6 a month or $60 a year to subscribe to the Observer, and everything we do gets sent straight into your email inbox. Super, super easy. So auburnobserver.com.
Cool. Yeah. Worth every penny, folks. We talked about this a week ago about how the pass rush for Auburn was really strong through 2 weeks. The sacks weren't always there, but they were always impacting the play. That didn't seem to happen as much against Penn State. Why do you think that was?
Penn State's a bigger offensive line and a better offensive line.
So they're going to play a lot of bigger and better offensive lines than the first two teams that they've played.
Right.
Maybe not this week. I think Penn State's offensive line is better than Missouri's, but going forward after that,
yeah,
is this a concern in your eyes?
It is, just because you want to affect the game more. I thought in the first half Auburn got to there was a lot in terms of the pass efficiency and the accuracy and all that from Sean Clifford. But I thought early on the defensive line kept Auburn in the game. Like, they weren't playing poorly. I just think when the dam broke in the second half and it broke with the running game, just everything kind of fell apart from Auburn from there. You got to figure out ways to win a little bit more at the line of scrimmage, and whether that is bringing more blitzes or being a little bit more creative in some other areas. Like Derick Hall and Eku Leota and Colby Wooden and Marcus Harrison, they're not bad football players. They didn't automatically just become ineffective football players.
Yeah,
it's just something's not working. So you got to figure out a way to kind of manage it without sacrificing a ton in your secondary as well. So I mean, maybe you see some more blitzes. Maybe you try to fire up some stuff to get after Missouri's quarterback, who has had his issues with a lot of that. And yeah, this Missouri offensive line is fascinating. They haven't given up a ton of sacks this season, given up a ton of tackles for loss. They are not doing much of anything right running the ball. So this is another game, kind of like the Penn State game, maybe step down a little bit. And just the fact, like, if you're Auburn and you have a chance to win this game, you have to, assert yourself at the line of scrimmage if you're Auburn's defense. And many different ways you can do that, because Luther Burden's good, and they've got some guys, they got some weapons at wide receiver, and your secondary is just not playing great right now. So you gotta figure out how to make it all work.
Yeah, I know the defense gave up a lot of points against Penn State, but even the times we've watched it since then, or the times I've watched it since then, I just have more faith that the defense is going to be okay.
Oh yeah,
than the offense. I know it was a bad game, but I think some of that is just they were on the field a ton.
They were on the field a decent bit, and it's stuff that you can clean up. Like, at no point did I watch Auburn's defense on Saturday and say, well, they just don't have the talent.
Yeah, right.
What they did, though, was did not play good football. They did not play good fundamental football. I thought the run fits were really, really off base from what they usually are for Auburn, especially at linebacker. Those guys can make plays, and they still have it, but it's like you got to tighten up, because everything kind of went bad for you if you're Auburn on defense last Saturday. But yeah, no, it's not a situation where I'm sitting there looking at this team where it's like on the offensive line, I have had for years now significant concerns. Like, I don't know if they have the dudes. I don't know if they have the talent to do what they want to do. I don't feel the same way about the defense, but the way the defense played, like, it's that execution word again. It's that fundamental word again.
Yeah.
It's all true. And like, that's the thing, is like, you can say, hey, the guys need to execute the calls better and all that. Like, that's 100% true. The players have to play better, but like, that's on coaching as well. Like that, whenever you say, hey, we got to execute, we got to do these things, like, that's not a, like, well, it's just the players' fault kind of thing. Like, you got to keep on, like, the coaches are paid a lot of money to make sure your guys can execute. So, it's an everything kind of thing. And I think that's the thing about Auburn football right now after a loss that badly at home. If you get paid money to coach for Auburn, or if you strapped it up and stepped on the field at any point on Saturday for Auburn, you got stuff to work on and you got stuff to improve. Yeah,
no, there's no question about it. Yeah, I'm still okay with the defense, so I'm in the same boat as you. But
could just be a bad game.
Yeah, it happens. The offense, though, like, I just have a genuine concern how you're going to consistently score points. Yep. Missouri, like you said, their rush defense is very suspect. Like, I think Auburn will be able to run the ball, and it'll open up a ton of things.
If you can't, that's bad news.
It's bad. And even no matter how you win, but you can't run the ball on Saturday. If you win, then it's close. it's still like,
bad sign.
Yeah, moving forward. But just against LSU's defense, the Mississippi schools on the road. Those are just going to be tough. It's going to be tough to consistently score unless something drastically changes.
Yep. And now you're in a situation where the guy that you have trusted to be your QB1 is out for at least this week.
Yeah.
Could be more. So, yeah, it's kind of do or die time if you're Auburn's offense. I don't think anyone's going to sit here and expect them to be a really good offense this season, but you got to be a lot better than that if you're going to survive. Right. As a coaching staff and as a team through the entire season without, it really, really getting ugly.
Right. Jay Ferg, one more time, how can people sign up and check out everything you got going on, man?
AuburnObserver.com. A lot of podcasts, a lot of newsletters out this week, and there'll be more coming up. And yeah, we'll be doing a little bit more basketball as well. Bruce Pearl talked to us. If you want some good news, go read what I wrote about Auburn's basketball team, because Bruce was very, very insightful about where he feels about his roster is right now. Yep, a lot of depth, which seems to be a storyline going in like the last 3 seasons, and it's worked out pretty well. So yeah, for sure. AuburnObserver.com, worth every single bit of it. We'll be back Sunday morning for a little morning after podcast. Daryl Dapprich will join me to recap the Auburn-Missouri game. You can read all my written work at auburndaily.com, and this has been Locked On Auburn.